This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 6, Jesus, the Faithful High Priest, ready for teaching on February 5. It's from the series In These Last Days, The Message of Hebrews, and is authored by Dr. Felix Cortez, who is the Associate Professor of New Testament Literature in the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. And I'm your reader for today, Dr. Percy Harrold. Thursday, February 3, a Sinless Priest. Read Hebrews chapter 7, verse 26. What are the 5 characteristics of Jesus in this passage? Hebrews 7, verse 26. For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens. Jesus was holy. This means that Jesus was without fault in relationship to God. Hebrews 2 verse 18 reads, For in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. And Hebrews 4:15, For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. And Hebrews 5, verses 7 and 8, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear, though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. The Old Greek translation of the Old Testament used the same Greek term to designate those who maintain their covenant relationship with God and with others. Jesus was undefiled. He remained pure and untouched by evil, despite being tempted in all points, as we've just read in Hebrews 4:15, and in Hebrews 2:18 we read, For in that he himself has suffered being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. Jesus' perfect sinlessness is important for his priesthood. The Old Covenant stipulated that sacrificial victims had to be without blemish, to be acceptable to God, as we read in Leviticus 1, verses 3 and verse 10. Verse 3 reads, If his offering is a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own free will at the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. And verse 10, If his offering is of the flocks, of the sheep, or of the goats, as a burnt sacrifice, he shall bring a male without blemish. Jesus' perfect obedience during his earthly life made it possible for him to offer himself as an acceptable sacrifice to God, as we read in Hebrews 9:14. How much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse our conscience from dead works to serve the living God? Jesus was separate from sinners when he ascended to heaven. The Greek verb tense suggests that this is a present state for Jesus, which began at a specific point in time. Jesus endured hostility from sinners during his earthly life, but he was victorious and then was seated at the right hand of God, as we read in Hebrews 12, verses 2 and 3, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. Jesus also is separate from sinners in that he was perfectly sinless, as we previously read in Hebrews 4:15. Let's read that again. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Jesus was exalted above the heavens. It means that Jesus has been exalted above everything there is, and therefore he is one with God. In the Psalms, God is the one who is exalted above the heavens, as we read in Psalm 57, verse 5, "Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, let your glory be above all the earth," and verse 11, "Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, let your glory be above all the earth," and Psalm 108, verse 5. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and your glory above all the earth. Jesus was fully human, but he was not a sinful human being as we are, as we read in Hebrews 2, 14-16. "Inasmuch then as the children have partaken of flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared in the same, that through death he might destroy him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and release those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. For indeed, he does not give aid to angels, but he does give aid to the seed of Abraham." Jesus is perfect, not simply because he never sinned, but because he was not corrupted by sin as we are. Yet, because he also was fully human, he also is our example. He shows us how to run the race of life, as we read in Hebrews 12, verses 1-4. "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin." He is the example that we must follow, as we read in 1 Peter 2, verses 21-23. "For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who, when he was reviled, did not revile in return, when he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously." Because he is holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, as we read in Hebrews 7:26 in the ESV, he is our Saviour, and we too can reflect his character. And so to finish today, though Jesus was a human being like us, he never sinned. How do we wrap our minds around this amazing thought? Think about just how holy he must be. Why then should the promise of his holiness, being credited to us by faith, help assure us of salvation? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.